Good evening, everyone, and welcome to ET Now Presents the Cisco Technology Awards. This panel discussion that we have today at the awards is about transforming India through the Internet of Everything. On my extreme left is Pradeep Parmeshwaran, who's a partner at McKinsey & Company. I've got Tarun Mishra, who is the founder of Covaxis. They're one of the hottest machine-to-machine startup companies in the country. Of course, got VC Gopalratnam, who's the CIO for the Asia Pacific, Japan and China region at Cisco, and Professor Nilay Yajnik, who is the chairman of the Information Systems Department at NMIMS. Professor Yajnik was also on the jury for the awards. I'm going to begin, actually, Gopal, by letting you sort of set the stage for this panel by defining the Internet of Everything, because like any new technology, the definition tends to be a bit fuzzy. A lot of people saying different things. There's the Internet of Things, then Cisco's defining the Internet of Everything. If you could give us, give the audience the Cisco view of the Internet of Everything and the vision for the immediate future.
If you really think about where we are headed in the next 15 to 20 years, at the foundation of everything that we're going to do, you have connectivity and the Internet. And really, Cisco's definition of the Internet of Everything is how do you converge people, process, things, and data is really at the center of that. It's really a continuum if you think about it, right? At the base, you have connectivity or the network, and out of that you get information, and that information or data then translates into something called insight. And using that insight, it gives you the ability to have foresight. And once you have foresight, you can have some kind of a business outcome, which could be automation, or it could be digitization, or some enhancement of productivity, and so on, which ultimately leads to more efficient processes, faster growth, profitability, etc. So if you really think about all of that, at the foundation of all of this is technology, driven to a large extent by the Internet. And a lot of technologies have to really come together to make the Internet of Everything work, right? It's not just one thing. So the mobile cloud is at the center of that. The device is important. Sensor technology is absolutely critical. Then, of course, there's data, which brings everything together. The network and connectivity is a big part of that. So it's not really just one piece that can work and make something happen. All of these have to work together. And at the same time, another thing that really needs to happen is a consortium needs to come together. It's not something that one company or one individual can do, or one government can do. People have to really come together and work.
Right. It's a very interesting point that Gopal mentioned, that it's not just one thing, but lots of things have to come together, because, Tarun, if you think about it, we've had sensors around for a while. We've had these individual components floating around for almost over a decade. But now, do you really see it all coming together as an integrated sort of an offering?
So one fine night, I'm receiving a call from a vice chairman of a billion-dollar manufacturing company in India who happened to be using our system. And he says that your system, and he is traveling in the USA, and he had got an app. On the app, he receives a notification through our system that one of your plant has lost $12,000 in last 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
10 minutes. And then he calls that, why is it happening? I said, okay, why are you calling me? You call to your plant. I'm just the technology supplier to you, in a good way. So he said, okay, let me get my plant head on the call, on the conference. And he says, plant head, that what's going wrong? He says, nothing, everything is hunky-dory, everything is fine. Machines are running, plant is producing, so on and so forth. But I just received a notification, that's what vice chairman says. And then the plant head says, okay, so I'm not aware about this. He says, look, it's so-and-so area in one of the machine where it is not adhering to our SOP, and because of that, the machine of utilization is down by 10%. Can I ask for a reason? Now, the plant guy who is in the plant is not aware about the situation, while vice chairman who is traveling in the USA gets the notification instantly. That's power of IOEs, right? What internet did is it connected humans and connected computers. What IOE is going to do is it's connecting everything. So every grain on earth actually can be connected. And hence the knowledge, the information, the kind of decisions can be taken. So the latency in decision making is being crashed to real time and in some cases predictive.
Professor, many of the things that Tarun mentioned, again, in theory, could have been done if you had a closed loop, very expensive system, even 15 years ago, using all proprietary technologies. Would you say that because costs are coming down so quickly and because the internet is a common platform where there are common standards, the internet of everything, therefore, really can be a revolutionary technology?
Yeah, I think, of course, the Internet of Everything or the Internet of Things is a very interesting concept which will change a lot of things happening all around the world. But one thing I'd like to just mention, I don't think the Internet of Everything is just about connectivity. It's a lot more than connectivity. It's, in my opinion, a change of mindset. It's about knowing how to serve people. When I say serve people, everybody is in the business of serving somebody or the other. Bob Dylan's song, you have to serve somebody at every point in time. So do you know that somebody? That is a basic question. I've never really understood why knowing your customer has to be a regulation. I thought knowing your customer is a part of the reason for our existence. And I guess this is where the Internet of Things makes the real difference.
That's a great note to come to you, Pradeep, because nothing is officially a trend until you guys sign off on it. So let's get the McKinsey view on that. But also in terms of the mindset change, there's this trend of, especially with technology, overestimating in the short term, but underestimating in the long term. So give us your perspective on the big vision first.
The reality is there is going to be massive hype. I just think that that's the way technology works. There will be a burst of the bubble. From that, will emerge massive change. And the fundamental possibilities of the IoT are so strong that will become a reality. Whether that happens in 2, 3, or 6 or 7 years, I think is a matter of anybody's opinion. I think we believe in all the thinking that we have done that the value that is going to be added by the IoT is quite immense. I think the more interesting thing to me is for India. What does this really mean? And we have done some really interesting thinking in the recent, 6 months or so. And if I think about the biggest sectors that need help in India, education, healthcare, agriculture, manufacturing, and citizen services. If I think about those 5, and I keep consumer out, tech out, any of these sectors you pick today, our starting point is so poor that no amount of physical assets, physical investments, and people are going to be able to catch up to the aspirations, the rate at which it's increasing. And fundamentally, technology is the only solution, and we have done use cases for each of these sectors which tell us that what IoT can do for healthcare or what IoT can do for citizen services is just dramatic. The possibilities are very real. Now the real game is how do you bring the ecosystem and the consortium and the players together in a way that can do this in a sustainable way quickly. We do think that the business case for many of these things is still unproven. And frankly, that's kind of what causes innovation to happen, right? So we expect large-scale innovation using the technology possibilities that are real now to make many of these things happen within the next 5 years is what I would guess.
Great point by Pradeep that business cases still unproven. So as an early adopter, somebody who's trying to push the ecosystem in this direction, how does India play out even compared to, say, the other Asia-Pacific countries, Japan and China? What's the feedback so far when you've been going out there talking to potential customers? Or
the key thing here is for India as a country, the opportunity is to be able to do this at scale because we are starting at very low levels. We have such a large runway in front of us. That's number one. I think the second thing also is we've traditionally done well when we think about services. We are a services-oriented economy that's trying to become more of a product and a manufacturing kind of an economy. And to a large extent, the success of an IoT paradigm is really going to depend on how effectively anybody can monetize the service and make it affordable and make it consistent and repeatable and reproducible. Really, I don't think we necessarily spend a whole lot of time on ROI calculations because to a large extent, a lot of the benefits are soft benefits. Right. And you really can't put a dollar value to change management and goodwill, right? Which is ultimately what a citizen service will deliver. So we don't get too hung up on the ROI aspect of it because I think you can artificially create ROIs if you want. The real ROI is in the soft side. And the key sectors are education and healthcare and manufacturing and security and so on. I don't think anyone's really figured it out entirely. I think everyone is waiting for somebody else to do it and show them the way, right? There are some early adopters, but more people are going to be followers.
On manufacturing specifically, today a company like yours has a very impressive roster of clients. Clearly, the sector's interested, but those early conversations when you talk about the Internet of Everything as a concept, do you think the manufacturing industry in India is sort of on the ball?
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, on the contrary, when we started 5 years ago, of course, there was a lot of skepticism, and the questions were how real this concept could be. How will it look like? What will be the business impact out of it? 5 years down the line today, you will not believe that there is a pull from Indian manufacturing segment. A lot of that we have created, of course, a lot of hard work has gone, but manufacturing sector in India is clearly saying one thing. And what happened that if you look at last 20, 25, 30 years of horizon, I mean, what happened worldwide in manufacturing. India was far, and still is, arguably it still is far behind in terms of qualitative aspects of manufacturing. When you talk about the world-class manufacturing, there is no company in India which probably will fall in that category, right? Now, if India has to surpass, or India has to grab, world-class manufacturing stature, that's not going to happen by adopting a conventional initiative like Kaizen and Lean and what Toyota did in the 70s,
right.
India cannot be doing in 2014. We
missed
already
that
missed the bus. There is no point chasing that bus and trying to equate ourselves with in the world manufacturing map. So hence what they are understanding that hence there has to be another lever which helps them leapfrog and completely transform the entire manufacturing horizon. Correct? And that will be, that can be done only by adopting such kind of technologies. And wherein the impact of this, if I tell you that, a simple adoption of our solution in a typical large complex plant improves their production efficiency by not less than 30 to 35%. It's a mind-blowing number. Of course, there are few early adopters, there will be followers and the laggards. That cycle will always follow, but yes, I am quite encouraged that Indian manufacturing industry is actually willing to spend more money on our kind of system than they already did on ERP, factually.
So the other interesting thing that this brings up is even the nature of what is a manufacturing job could change going forward. So you would have seen that a lot of people would do core engineering at their undergraduate level and then do an MBA and go into the other more exciting sectors. We also see that if everything involves having software and technical skills of the new wave type, you see more students also probably wanting to join a place like Coaxis.
Today, what you find is manufacturing companies are increasingly becoming service-oriented companies. In fact, GE's Jeff Immelt, I just read the other day, he says every industrial company will soon become a software company tomorrow, right? Because of the Internet of Things. So the idea is, how do you actually, to extend the earlier discussion we had about knowing your customer, are you able to predict? The idea of using the Internet of Things is to predict things so that you serve your customer better. And therefore, the entire kind of scenario that we see in India is a tremendous service business opportunity that comes up for manufacturing companies into becoming software companies, for existing software companies, for startup ventures. I understand that in Bangalore, for example, there are a whole lot of healthcare-based startups which have come up, and that will really create that will change the way in which medicine is being worked. The focus will be on wellness, not on curing people. So that in turn brings up tremendous opportunities and through the Internet of Everything.
I'm going to take off from where the professor started on healthcare specifically, because that's something that a lot of people who are, say, customers or consumers of regular tech products can visualize, because you're seeing this whole wave of bands that you can wear, whether it's from Nike or Samsung or the upcoming Apple and Android kits. So they understand, okay, that's a device that was otherwise not internet enabled and now is and gives me a direct benefit. But it's still seen as something that the geeks or the nerds or the early adopters are using. Does that percolate eventually into transforming healthcare for millions of people? Do you see that happening as a logical extension?
Definitely possible. I think the biggest challenge that we have in India right now is really the penetration of broadband to the entire country. And if we can make broadband connectivity possible to the rural parts of India, clearly that will give people better access to healthcare. And then certainly we can use technologies like video or even voice enabled to actually have them connect with healthcare specialists who live in the city. This is something that is happening even today in rural parts of India, either through kiosks or through video capabilities, where you can actually transmit your vitals to a specialist who might be sitting in a hospital in the city somewhere. And if you really think about the whole medical experience, right, when you actually go in to see a doctor, the amount of time that you actually spend with the doctor is about 5 minutes. And you actually spend about 4 hours at the clinic. And most of the time is either you're waiting or you're trying to take your blood pressure or your temperature and so on. All of those activities could very easily be done remotely or from home or from a kiosk. And the time that you actually spend with a specialist really can then be channelized, and then you get a much better experience. So clearly, I think providing healthcare facilities to rural parts of India is really going to be the transformative application, and that is very much happening today, and that will certainly drive the cost of healthcare down.
Pradeep, what tends to happen in cycles is that first the applications are used by very few elite early adopter type of people, and they're always naysayers. So right from the days when Sam Pitroda was told that what's the point of having STD in villages, we can't go there and complain about not having water. And I think the naysayers have been converted as far as how useful a mobile phone is even to a person, not at the top of the pyramid. Same way, Internet of Things, at this stage, you're looking at high-end manufacturing applications, maybe some fancy CCTV stuff, wearables for, again, early adopters. But do you see it broadening down and percolating like other technologies did?
See, if you study technology companies, a fascinating thing has happened in the last 20, 25 years. The time that it takes for you to go from your first customers to 100 million subscribers has gotten compressed in every sphere that you can think about. Obviously more for software-oriented services and applications, but it's true for everything else for a variety of reasons. One, distribution has become much faster. Access has become much easier. Price points have become more affordable. So the cycles have started to compress a lot. I would imagine with IoT, there are likely to be a few killer solutions that are likely to gain adoption quite quickly. But there's always some magic that's got to happen that's got to do with innovation. And I would easily imagine in healthcare, there would be something that happens that would be adopted by 50, 70, 100 million people. And I expect that to happen in a much more compressed time frame. As historically, it's been double digits. This is probably going to be in low single digits.
The time frame is also interesting from a deployment perspective. It took a long time to invest in, say, wiring up your whole plant, getting everything up on ERP systems. It was a process. But once that backbone already exists, it's much faster today even for, say, a customer of yours to get everything intelligent in the plant.
Today, one plant goes live in less than 2 weeks. Our next year's target, by this time next year, we are saying one plant, 1 day. So what is happening that's another interesting thing which Pradeep said. That everything, the cycle is getting crashed. So our implementation cycle also, what it does effectively is it gives you a quicker pay back time as a customer, right? Because earlier if it takes 4 months, then it takes another 2 months to stabilize, so 6 months is gone in implementation. And then you have another 6 months in the year to kind of start gaining out of it. Today we are saying do it in 1 day and you will have entire year to leverage it, right? So there is a faster turnaround, there is a faster payback, a longer payback period, and mind-blowing return on it. So yes, technology is also allowing you to crash that cycle of deployment and implementation.
Flip side, Professor, of clashing these timelines is, especially in a country like India, that we're slow to change, and then you do these disruptive things that affect lots of people's lives. The second-order effects are hard to predict. We're already seeing, for example, a company like Uber get a lot of pushback in places like Europe from local, transport associations, from people who are afraid that it may cut into their, existing businesses. So how would something like that, be addressed as a challenge?
Yeah.
You do something too rapidly, we may not be ready to handle that change.
That's right. You know, change management is an issue with any technology. It's not just about the Internet of Everything. One way to address this is to see that value is driven everywhere, at every point of the chain. For example, if you have a shoe manufacturer with a chip embedded in the shoe, it's quite possible that after some point in time, the value of the data generated by that shoe is more than the value of the shoe itself, right? Or for that matter, if Michelin, the tire manufacturing company, embeds a chip with, as a part of this Internet of Things, the value, the data value for that particular tire is more than the actual value of the tire itself, you see? So the entire business models are changing and value gets added at every point in the chain. That's a fundamental disruption that happens.
Just quickly to sort of get closing comments. Gopal, if you were the person in charge, say at even the government, to quickly do one deployment just to show a quick success to the public and therefore get buy-in for future sort of successes, any one particular sector, even one piece of any sector that you think would come to your mind as an immediate must-do?
I would say education, because I think education is probably the most sustainable competitive advantage for a country. And therefore, whatever we can do to drive IoT type of applications in the education space to just uplift the country overall from an intellectual capital perspective, I would do that.
Pradeep, you mentioned earlier, so I'm going to ask you to specifically expand on that one. You said safety and security in the urban context, something very important for our situation.
India is such a large country that faces all kinds of domestic threats and international threats. And it is virtually impossible for a physical force to do anything to meaningfully address that. I have found some state governments becoming extremely proactive in finding solutions that can address this using IoT. For example, video solutions that are at every traffic light. I think that concept is starting to catch on. It's tough to implement at scale, but it's a very powerful idea. The technology exists. Idea of using scanning and face recognition, particularly at airports. The idea of using IoT sensors in ports, large containers that otherwise are physically incredibly difficult to go and monitor, but using invasive thermal imaging IoT devices to measure that. I think some of those ideas are big ideas that are starting to find at least mind space and mind share. I have not seen a lot of at-scale deployments of that yet, but I would imagine, I really hope that we do that with foresight and not wait for an incident to happen. And I think that opportunity exists today and it's live. I do think that the business model and how that's going to be justified as spend, I hope people don't spend too much time worrying about that for these kinds of applications.
Right. Tarun, you're not allowed to do the manufacturing vertical, but anything apart from that?
Yeah, I mean, that's close to my heart, and we are going to do it soon, hopefully, and that's entertainment and media. So what I feel that's another thrilling application of IoE, where today, if there are millions of viewers at any given moment across various television channels, internet, TVs, radios, and various other applications also. So if I have to, on a real-time basis, try to do TRP analysis and bind it with my spending on the advertisement, that could be a very interesting, and it can open up a different world altogether. And then the second is, of course, the entire integration. I'm not talking about the manufacturing, but but it's part of the supply chain, as you said, that connected cities. So you have a goods warehouse, you have traffic, you have logistics and entire transportation solutions, which is outside. So it's a part of supply chain, but you can't call it manufacturing. Right. But integration of that along with the entire ecosystem, and that's something which we see that there is a great possibility over there.
Professor, I'll let you have the last word. He mentioned education. You were on the jury and you saw many other interesting applications. Any one that you think is sort of a low-hanging fruit that we maybe should try and attempt as an implementation at a large scale?
There was an organization, which was about, citizen services, citizen kind of services, and how they were using water management for that particular city. That was very interesting. There was another company which was talking about building solutions for agricultural management. So managing, irrigation through smart devices. So these are some that come to my mind. But I guess each and every one was a fantastic initiative.
This is the first ever Internet of Everything sort of themed technology award. So this hopefully sets the tone for future such discussions, and we'll have more of them going forward on ET Now. Thank you so much for joining us, and a round of applause for all our panelists, please.